next person I haven't seen on the list, but if it's Jawad there on the list, please contribute. Here it is, Jawad. Yes, I can see you now.
I'm here. Hi, everyone. My name is Jawad Ramanu. I'm joining from Benin Republic, and I'm currently an innovation specialist at the United Nations Population Fund in Benin. Prior to that, I was a regional coordinator for a project that has to do with scaling up on education budget in Liberia. And yeah, jumping that, I was my last experience in AIESEC was as an MCVP, incoming global volunteer activity in Liberia. And then yeah, I'm so happy to be part of this panel because it's always good to reconnect with AIESEC. Thanks.
Thank you. And we have one more person, Roger. He was the first joining. So Roger, please share some of your story with us, and then we go to open up the questions. I guess Roger on mute.
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So my name is Roger Dago, and I'm calling you from Madagascar in the Indian Ocean, but I'm from Ivory Coast. I'm in Cote d'Ivoire in West Africa. Well, I've joined AIESEC since 1985 when I was at the university. I spent 5 years in AIESEC when I was just to finish my business degree. Then I moved to some other countries for started in a bank and move on the petroleum industry for now, something like 30 years as of today. And I'm working here in Madagascar as a CEO of a plastic company on behalf of an equity fund to help the people manage and organize the company. I've been in AIESEC at that time as a National Committee Exchange Controller, people that was taking, at this time, this is the name that we used to give to this specific role. I was in charge of, exchange and, taking care of internship from student that was coming from abroad and student from Cote d'Ivoire that wanted to have some more experience outside. I'm living in Madagascar with my wife and my 3 kids. Yeah, and it's very, very interesting after all these years to join AIESEC, to meet alumni from AIESEC again, and I'm very happy and pleased to be.
May I share that I did my exchange in Cote d'Ivoire in
really?
2011. Yes, I did. I worked
really?
in an NGO there, helping women, and I actually did the website of the NGO, but I lived there for 4 months.
Oh, 4 months. You love the place?
I loved it. I loved it.
Great.
It was the best experience. I blogged about it. It brings me a lot of memories. It's so good.
Interesting. Okay, so that's it.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of this panel. It is not only where we live, where we're educated, where we've been. We just saw from Abdo that he summed up more than 30 countries, been traveling. I travel more than 30 countries, Ken more than 100 countries. So we have this shared pollination experiences that made who we are. And now we have, responsibility as the government. And the first question comes is, how to make a difference. And I think come from 2 perspectives, how to make a difference in the job that we have and how to make a difference with the experience that we bring to the table. Yes, because we bring this vast experience. And it's an open caution though. We are not trying to solve the problem. If somebody presents something, let's not be argumentative. Hey, I know a better solution. What we're trying to do in the panel is to try to have exchange perspective into certain areas that maybe we can enhance the value and the impact that we can do as individual to our government or to our experiences. So I'm open up the door. And who wants to kind of start that and define that, call it the problem? Are we even making an impact? Let's start with that. Are we even making an impact that has a difference in what we do, or we're just doing our job 8 to 5 and, we are too much on this, channel of whatever government says, that's what we do. Can we as individuals even make an impact? Can we start with that? Raise your hand. Frankly, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind when you ask the question, and particularly working in government, is one of the lessons is patience. No important change comes quickly, and I think that's something that in today's world, it's kind of, we need to keep reminding ourselves that you know, it's not about tweeting or about posting on TikTok or about something quick. Like, if you really want to make change, you kind of have to, you know, you have to be patient and actually stick to a problem for a long time. Dedicate to that problem day in, day out. I know that usually wins come like in centimeters, not in miles, you know. That's one of the main lessons I think I've gotten from working in government. It's very rewarding when you actually achieve something, when you actually do something, but when you look back, it takes a lot of time to do it.
Is patience not contrasting with all of the political environment that has every 2 years change, every 4 years change, you know, left side and right side? How is patience going combination with the politics change versus, you know, the achievement that you want to do? Just to keep the conversation.
I think AIESEC, and trying to tie back to AIESEC, right? AIESEC shows us in a way a bit of an ideal world, how things should work if we all cooperate and try to work together, and we're all optimistic and try to change the world. And when you come to the real world, when you come to after AIESEC, it's not always that the case, you know. So it's a lot of it. It's when you test, I think you test all the skills that you have developed in AIESEC in terms of interacting with people, working with others, because it's not always easy, and people will not be convinced about how you see the world of the bat, right? So a lot of the challenges, how do you overcome those barriers? How do you create allies? How do you make other people see the problem in a way that you see it? And how do you also learn from other people in a way that you can find a middle ground and say, well, maybe we cannot do that thing, but we can do this thing. When looking at the political environment, when looking at, I think it's one of the things I recommend to people is, you know, if you really want to change a problem, then you have to wrestle with the problem. A lot of people talk about governments and how government should improve. Well, you know, I invite people to come in government and kind of experience it, because many times you realize that these are systems. When you're in here, you see how the system constrains action and how the system constrains individuals. And it's not all about the individual having, you know, whether it's a good motive or a bad motive, but also it's about what are the constraints on which this individual is working. And I think as an AIESECer, we can identify those constraints and kind of work around them. But it's not easy. It's just a problem to solve, I think. And what we need is people that are willing to take the time to solve that problem.
So who can take the conversation? So what Frank is saying, we have a triangle between patience, the system constraints, yes, and you know, the fact that you have to be part of that system. But the question is, can we make a difference? So can we use this patience, you know, or you know, all of the system and processes and all that, and put in the time of we still have to make a difference, we still have to make an impact. How do we use that as not as a tool to make an impact, not as a roadblock to make an impact? Who can take the conversation next? Carlos and Lucia, go ahead. It's a dialogue, so we can still have dialogue.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would say very quickly that the world is changing to politics. They should be more conscious of global development and do more things into social programs, because the thing now is to benefit the masses of people, the woman, the unprotected groups, the weaks, and everyone in every society will tend to the cooperation. You will see that Mexico now is the third country in global growing.
Lucia, go ahead. It looks like Lucia wants to, she's the panelist. I allow panelists to interfere.
Yes. what I would like to say is that it depends on also on the level that you work. I do believe we make an impact every day on a single decision that we take. We make an impact. Sometimes the effects are long-term in long-term policies, such as economy, education. But for example, in my case, that I work for the transportation sector and in the transportation area, every day I make decisions that change the daily life of the citizens. And that to me is very important. And also it's something that I learned in AIESEC before and I continue doing because I wanted to do an impact. And the most important thing is also to be empathetic, right? And that is something that I learned in AIESEC, to put yourself in the citizen's shoes, and as a public servant, think what is the best decision you can take for that person as the power you have been delegated to make those decisions. So bottom line is that, like, to be empathetic, but we do have an impact on people's lives, and it depends on the scope of the decision you're making. The impact will be more short-term, immediate, or more long-term, and it's a responsibility.
So Andrew, you heard this. If you have this mirror approach, you can deal with that if you think about the constituents, their problem, and bring it back into and with their hearts. It's almost like customers are constituents. If you bring that in, then how you deal, and AIESEC track the skills. How do you think about that? Will that help to create a difference and impact?
Yeah, so if I reflect back to my career in government, in the transport department, the planning department, the perspective I had from government, if you have a metaphor of a kaleidoscope, essentially the multiple government agencies itself is an ecosystem where planning needs to work with healthcare, with transport. It is bureaucratic and there's systems in there in order to regulate it as it is. So it is challenging in times, compared to, say, a corporate where you can leave and go to another competitor. So what anchors you is really about your purpose and your intrinsic values, where rather than making a difference to one organization and then moving to another organization, you actually have a very pivotal role to influence and support the ecosystem of multiple government agencies. But that kaleidoscope shifts where the government agencies also work in partnership with communities as well for whatever the benefits or the social outcomes are. I guess from a personal, in terms of if you're in a role, bring your multiple selves. And what I mean by that is you bring your professional practice, be it a change manager, a project manager, an accountant, you bring that discipline and that skill set into the team, into your function. But the multiple selves, take on your care values. So courage, action, responsibility, and empathy. That's sort of one of the baseline values that I sort of work from a frame set. But you need to have that courage to be able to shift that paradigm, shift that thinking, open to them and sort of be courageous and not challenge in terms of tension, but positive tension of government has this opportunity to fold that paper, to accelerate, to sort of move towards that third horizon. So shifting the paradigm, shaping the narrative, but also I think for me, if I reflect back of the AIESEC journey and values, it's really putting the human journey and the experience of the human into the environment of government. So it's not just driven by policies and mandates as mechanisms. It's actually what does civilian society look like? Yeah.
Yeah, but then to do all that is like assuming that you have full flexibility, you can make do whatever you want, and everything works. But reality is telling us we have roadblocks, we have constraints, we have certain goals, certain things we have to achieve. We have to be practical about it. And I think Frank said we need to have allies. How do we overcome constraints? Can somebody give me an example of overcoming constraints and then we was overcoming and succeeding? We need to come up with at least 1 or 2 examples to share. This is how it took to overcome constraints while I brought the AIESEC. This is what it took to succeed, while I brought the AIESEC. Who can talk about the constraints and who can talk about the success story? So we learn from a panelist. I don't know, Roger, you want anybody?
Yes, maybe I can take this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I wanted to start, by really, personally, if I take my personal experience, I think the best way to really make a change is to be engaged, working with government, because that is where the policies are made. That is where the decisions are coming from. So, it's actually, a best way to really be engaged and make a change. There is something that really lead me in everything I do. And that's what I also do when I joined the United Nations, is that, when you join a team, working with the United Nations or other government, there is always that fight of intergenerational, things. That when you come in, you are a young person. It's same in their head that you wanted to really change everything. You come up with new ideas or new way of doing things, and people really start putting some blocks in how you operate and so on. But the one things you do is to really show the people you're working with that you are bringing these things to make things more flexible, make things more easy. And when they find out, there's a value in what you are proposing, it goes up. That you have to have in your mind that you are not coming to change like everything. If you can do great things, just do small things with greatness. Once you show up your collaborator, that's, there's a way to have a financial record without having to putting some things on papers and have some hours of calculation. And the person see the values that what you are bringing is you can easily do a coding on Excel, and it really helps him. And you even show him how he can go about it and have, have the time conscious and being more, specific in what he does. I think at the end of the day, little by little we get there. I just want to take the example of the United Nations now. The United Nations is really doing has its first strategies on youth and also innovation now. And that it was a process actually. It wasn't so easy because, United Nations is more like, intergenerational people, big people with society. But then when the young people were started coming into agencies, coming up with innovation strategy, it really took. At the end of the day, we have a system now where innovation is like a core enabler to reach the sustainable development goals. And that has been led by young people and by new people that came in with that mindset of putting new people to change how things are done.
So you are saying we are overcoming, and Roger, you can join, we are overcoming our constraints by bringing young people to voice. That's this, I must expect that's the answer, and bringing multiple people perspective to the table. I just want to make sure we don't get lost in the system, because I couldn't hear you saying how do you overcome it. You say, hey, more people to the table, more perspective, but I still didn't hear how you overcome the constraints, how you face the constraint. If somebody can give an actual example, this is what it took to overcome that, this is what it takes to do something about it, and success. I see Roger and Lucia, come in. Join in, and this is a dialogue. Yeah, we have to find a way to make a difference. Otherwise, we're part of a system. We know the government exists. System is there. I want to challenge you guys. Raise it up. Can we do some impact? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, if you allow me, I would like to talk about my personal experience on that. I'm a pure corporate guy coming from the corporate sector. And I've had, through my business experience, the opportunity to work with some government bodies. I've even been part of kind of, political shadow cabinet, but I moved up a little bit, very quickly. Okay, we all agree that government work is a public service, right? With, all the burdens that we know about public administration and civil service. Sometimes, governance problem, sometimes, dishonesty, lack of competition, conflict of interest, and all these kind of things. I think that after all these years, what I can take back is this: when working at the government with the objective of making a real difference, we first must keep in mind as a core and inner mindset that the government is an institution put in place on a temporal basis. It's not meant to last for a very long time. So you have a time frame. wherein you can make a kind of impact or initiate any progress aiming at making a true difference. The second point for me is that you also know that the team on power at a certain time is under a kind of framework, right? A political agenda. So if you join in the government or the public service, it is then important that you know this agenda, this political framework of agenda and its constraints, so that you will be able to navigate through, the system and make things happen. The other thing, which for me, sorry, let me finish. The other thing for me, I think is very important is you need some specific skills, which for me are flexibility, agility, to understand the political context and always come with different options. Because the real question is, what are you willing to let go? To what extent? How much are you willing to compromise? And I'm not, like criticizing when I talk about compromise, because I think that in the government sector, you have bright people, you have people that have a lot of values, but compromise without losing your values. So just because the solution that you think are right, or the solution that are going to be accepted will probably not be the ones that you think are the most worthy or appropriate. So to summarize my points in 4 words, I would say purpose, integrity, which is related to your mindset. What is your mission? Are you able to be flexible? Are you able to be persistent? Because a lot of you spoke about that. Then come discipline, skills, performances, efficiency, and the way you manage it, competency and experience. And the last thing is innovation. Because sometimes in the government body or in government work, it's not that easy, even something is great, if something is correct, to make it happen. So you have to come back and come back to your mindset, come back to your vision, and be very flexible. This is what I would like to add. Otherwise, especially in Africa, I'm sorry to say that, but I know what I'm talking about. It's not easy. People follow people, but don't follow institutions, but don't follow ideals sometimes.
I think it's a great perspective. Lucia, go ahead. I just want to say, it seems like everybody, we're lost in the system, but I still want to do we get to a solution? We have all these skills, we have all this. Are we looking on the system, or are we working on a solution? Because we can explain the system all day long, but can we make a difference in the solution? Can we move forward? Can we make an impact? Go ahead, Lucia.
Yeah, sure.
No, I agree with what Roger was saying. I think when you said about overcoming a constraint or an obstacle, I think the difference is made if there's first of all the political way, the political aim is something that you need to be aligned to if you work in government. Of course, you need to be aligned to that. If not, you would be with a different. They're different agencies, and all of them share one purpose. And I think that is the way to overcome the different constraints, because if you put everything on the same purpose, on the same page, you will be able to overcome that constraint and move forward and make an impact. But all those purposes need to be aligned to the political movement of that administration. If you're not aware of that, if you don't do not agree with that political way in that administration, it's going to be difficult for you to achieve and to find a common purpose.
You'll not make it.
And I think also it depends maybe on the region. Maybe, for example, developing countries also might have this thing that Roger and I were saying. Maybe in some other areas of the world it's different, but I totally agree that there has to be a purpose that is common, and that has to be aligned to the political will. If not, it's not going to happen.
I understand, but I want to go a little bit with Frank. I'll leave you space there. It's just a point is, okay, we understand we have a purpose, we're there, but you know, in a corporate environment, if you have a purpose, you do everything it takes to get it done. You put a timeline, we put a budget, everything. I know we're in a government environment. If you have to build a road, how you overcome the corruption, yes, about it. If you have to, you know, do a trading within countries, how you make sure to get people at the table. Is there a practical solution that helps us work together, like different countries, so we don't work in isolation? Can we bring some practicality that shows, hey, we have a purpose, we are aligned, we understand the environment, but what can we also do to move it forward versus just aligning to it? Go ahead, Frank.
So I want to add some things, like, I don't know, because I think one question you're asking is like, can we be concrete about what change can be achieved, right? And I think the place, I guess I take issue with the question to some extent, because it's like movements. If you only talk about the end results, yeah, I can talk about accomplishments and say, for example, in my job, one of the programs I was working with is you know, educating 10,000 teachers to bring bilingual education to my country that supports people in rural areas. Yes, that's the end, but honestly, it's like a lot of little steps that take, and a lot of time, as I said, that take you to get there. Like to say that I was responsible for that, it's very difficult in government to take responsibility for an achievement. Same, there are other things that you know, right now my country, we're I'm part of my job at the embassy, we're trying to move how we think of science and technology as a country, and how can we get some agencies in my country to understand how we can partner with the United States on that. So that's a lot of work, but probably it won't take only one person, or it won't take only one individual. And as Lucia said, you have to figure out how to align this to political agendas and how to align this to political interests. And I think that's where the AIESEC kind of experience comes in, into how I think it's also, how do you lead, and I think that's very valuable in AIESEC, how do you put ego aside, right? Like in the end, you can achieve all of this as long as you don't care too much about who gets credit, because in the end, probably you are not the one that's going to get credit. Probably it's someone else, but if you can live with that, you will get it done. And then
thank you,
finally,
yeah,
in terms of the practical point of how to do this in government, and at least maybe because of my perspective at an embassy, right? Something I have learned is to understand where power and decision making resides. Sometimes it's not me the ones who needs to say something. Sometimes it's my ambassador the ones who needs to say something. So my role is to convince my ambassador that this is the way to go. And then my ambassador goes and talks to someone. And because it's the ambassador to Washington, this thing is happening. So was it me? Probably not. Is the ambassador the one who is achieving something in the end? But I think AIESECers and leaders, we can be in places when we can speak truth to power, to say this is wrong, this is right, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. Of course, you have to justify it. And finally, I think it's also like in a relationship, and sometimes I tell people, you know, if you're married, you have a friendship or whatever, it's like there are moments where you can say what you want to say, or you can say what you need to say. And those are two completely different things. You can always go around and say, I want to change the world, and you know, try to bump heads with people. And yeah, that's what you want to say. But what you need to say is something completely different to gain the support and cooperation of those people. So eventually you make change. In my country, we have some politicians, young politicians, actually very young people, younger than I am. And they are the antagonists, right? And they are the ones saying, oh, we need to change, and going against everyone. I mean, that's fantastic to raise awareness, if you will, but you're not gonna get anything done. You need to be smarter in the way you need to get things done. And even if you're working with, you know, politicians, usually it's not all good or all bad. You know, people are a mix. So I think you try to work with the good things, you try to stay away from the bad things. And that's definitely something that one needs to keep on in government, right? Like keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you, Franklin. On purpose, I challenge the status quo so I can stimulate the conversation, Franklin. I want to make sure there's a journey to our decision making, and I love the sharing process that you map up the decision makers. And even though we all want to take credit, we don't have to take credit. Significant distinction. Andrew, you were trying to say for a few minutes something, so go ahead and take the conversation forward.
I agree with the panelists. There is this constant tension between the political agenda and what your agenda is of what can be a better world. Going back to the practical in the day-to-day role, for me in my role in government, it was taking the AIESEC skills of facilitating dialogue, discussion, and workshops. And that meant going out to the different stakeholder groups who in their heart are doing it for their right purpose, but they're on polar spectrums, and your ability to use your AIESEC skills to allow them to put on the table or to have that dialogue conversation to really draw out not what needs to be done this quarter in a project, but where does that government want to land in their term. So it's like a relay race. The next party might pick up the baton and continue or might not. And by having that dialogue, you can work out what is realistic and what's feasible. In my case, when I was in Innovation New South Wales, we had a project which was actually the agency that allowed government to work with startups as our procurement strategy. And that was essentially setting up government and entrepreneurship private partnerships. And we had topics where it was addressing youth unemployment in our regional cities and communities. And it's not saying that the education department is not doing its role or doing what it can be, but it's how can we do this better with grassroots organizations or with tech firms in order to address youth unemployment and education in rural areas. And it meant that in that 1 year period on our project team, our role was to actually facilitate those sandbox workshops and create essentially a platform for Pitchfest, which then led to accelerate services into government.
Yes, so creating that dialogue with that AIESEC skills, I think helped go against all of the other silos and break the silos and bring that to the table. Look, Marielle wanted to say something with the baby. Yeah, Marielle.
This is the real alumni life, right? Well, yeah, I mean, this is reality, right? Having a baby, working and being an AIESEC alumni. But well, what I wanted to ask you and kind of to give you a background first is that when we say hacking the future, a lot of us think about, oh, the young AIESECers need this advice so they can choose their career path. But actually hacking the future goes beyond that because I'm a 31-year-old and we have alumni all around the world, different generations that maybe don't feel that they are contributing or they probably choose the wrong path. So hacking the future is about how can we help people find the real path. And with that, I want to ask you, I mean, what would you tell AIESECers or alumni why they should join government, why they should join politics? Why is this a place where actually they can be living leadership when they're not the boss? Or what is that advice that you will make, I don't know, like attractive or maybe challenging, like why you need AIESECers in government? And like what would you tell them to join, kind of like you were recruiting because you need more of us over there?
So Roger, looks like you want to.
Yeah, I mean, Mariel, I think this is where you can change things because the impact of the decisions that you take, the project that you implement can change the lives of populations. So if those projects are very interesting, then, I mean, it's a kind of, psychological reward. So the point is that sometimes if you work on yourself and you have personal values, right? And you are a little bit, I mean, if you have some tenacity, I just want to give you an example. I was working in the petroleum industry in 2012, and we were about to change there was a kind of new tax law that was not in favor of the petroleum industry. And we had a kind of, association of companies that was working in the petroleum industry. And we wrote something and we sent it to the minister, but it was not like, agreeing with us. We knew that was good because we had a lot of sessions, we discussed with a lot of people. But what we did is that we asked to meet the minister personally. We went to see the guy. We had the first discussion with him. And then we went to see him at home, various time, and at the end, you know, the decision has been taken in favor of the petroleum industry, right? So to come back to your inquiry, Marielle, most part of the time, what do we intellectuals or, you know, people that are educated in, I mean, between brackets, what we do is that we criticize the government in our cozy houses. And we are so afraid, and especially in Africa, to jump into the political scene or the administration scene because of, you know, the system, because of whatever we're afraid of. And we stay in our cozy homes, we criticize the government, and we don't jump into the decisions. So I would say, if you want to go into the government job and you want to change the thing, this is the best way. But you have to be consistent. You have to make up your mind to have a personal vision. You have to be, you have to have a lot of tenacity. And even if sometimes, as Franklin said, you think that the job is not something that you have personally done, you must be aware of the fact that, like, you know, the theory of followers. You help somebody who is in pole position to do something very great for the population. You're not going to be rewarded for that, but maybe it's the boss or something, or ministry or whatever. But you pushed as strong as you can to have this decision being made. So for me, wow, it's something very interesting, you know, but well, you have to be very dedicated and not be discouraged all the time. This is what I think.
If I have to add to what Roger is saying to your question, that if you are an AIESECer right now, you need to think of if you want to have an impact on people's lives and what that impact has to be. I used to work in the private sector. I used to work for, I don't know if you know the brand Glade, the air fresheners. And I said, I loved my job because it was very dynamic and very like interesting. But I say, do I want that my day-to-day work makes an impact on the supermarket shelves? So I put that question and I said, actually, I don't want that. I want to make a difference for people. And I think government is a way to do that. Join the government to make those changes in a very difficult environment. So first of all, is that purpose that you have? Do you want to make, which impact do you want to make with your job? That would be the first question. And also, if you want to continue growing, you need to accept it's a challenging environment, and but also a very dynamic and interesting. Everything changes all the time, right? So you can be with one administration and then the other one, and the objectives might change. So if you also like a dynamic environment, that's also an important thing to have in mind if you want to choose government. And last but not least, be patient, because as Franklin was saying at the beginning, sometimes changes take time and you won't see those changes immediately, but you need to have that ambition and purpose that it will keep you going through until that change is made. So purpose, dynamism, or like the challenging environment, and patience and commitment to those values so that the change is made.
Thank you. From time management, I'll let Franklin and Andrew looks like they want to say, and then we're going to open up for questions. We have 10 minutes left into the session. So I don't know if Franklin want to continue answer why will AIESECer want to become part of government? Why would they join? What's their motivation? Why will they make that change? Please go ahead.
Well, thank you. I think the way I would tell them to think about this is think of, if you want to make a change, whatever change you want to make, whatever you want to make it, how do you see that change scaling up, right? You start with a business and then you say, I'm going to impact 10 people. Okay, perfect. You do that. And then what do you want to do else? Then 100 people, 1,000 people. Eventually you'll get to the point that to reach the people that actually need your change, this has to become policy. Otherwise, the system is still not working. So it doesn't matter what change you're involved in. If you really want to change the world, eventually you will have to deal with government and with policy. So what I would tell to AIESECers, this does not need to be your lifelong commitment to, you know, a career in government. But I would say if you have an opportunity to serve, if you have that opening that doesn't present to too many people, honestly, I would say take it. Come in, learn, see what the challenges are, because in the best of scenarios, you will, in the worst of scenarios, actually, you would learn, you would understand what are the constraints we're working with, and whatever change you want to drive, whether it's from inside government or from outside government, now you understand how to work with this actor that is so important and actually has so many resources and so much capacity for change that that maybe you can either partner with it, you can either lead it, or you can advise it, or whatever it is. But now you will have the understanding of what are the constraints that exist, and how we can work under those constraints. I would say if any AIESECer is really serious about change, there is no way in their thinking government will not play a role. So that's why I would say come in, learn, understand. If you like it, stay. If not, then go and continue doing your thing, but with better understanding of how it is.
It was awesome.
I'll just
Andrew,
like
you want
to-
to say something too?
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to say, going back to what Roger was saying, in government, it's that magnitude and the shift of change you can do when you're in that role for whatever that duration. And riffing off Franklin of the role that government can do in change, government agencies interact from the time a child is born all the way to the human life journey of going to school and actually like end of life. There is all government agencies in there. So if you want to make a change to someone's life in any of those domains in those points, you can join those agencies, right? So that's in terms of those touch points. If I bring it back to one of my examples in work was, we were looking at the emergence of drone technology and its application in Australia, more so in my state. And through that sandbox that we stood up in Innovation New South Wales, when Franklin mentioned that corporates need to interact with government at one point of time, right? And with the drones, it's regulated by aviation laws and whatnot. So there is a component, as Franklin said, policy is that linchpin for that change to basically accelerate. So in that drone sandbox, we actually enabled the facilitation of drones to be flown at beaches to do shark spotting, drones to be flown into bushfires to find out where the fire front is, drones to be able to be flown at night in order to spot the heat fire heads at night. But all of those things prior were regulated by policy and regulation as a barrier. And it was only through the sandbox in our department that we stood up by having those conversations that I was talking about earlier, allowed us to identify what projects and actually pursue them within that 1 year period with the minister endorsement signed and approved. And that was a mandate to the Premier as well. So it had to be a deliverable within a 12 months time. That's me in closing.
So Jawad, you said you were going to add something.
Yes, I won't repeat what the other people have said, but I just want to tell my fellow AIESECers that we can think of government as a GV product. You know, you better sell this product when you consume it. It's not about being in the government for years or doing a lifetime career in government, but it's really fundamental and good to have an experience in that. Then afterward, you know, you can move on and starting your own NGO or your entrepreneurship. You know that where the policies are made is in the government. So when you work there, you better understand after you need to collaborate with them. It's easier to really collaborate with the government when you have had an experience in that government and you know that there's nothing can be changed in the country if there's no policies and policies are made in the government. Thanks.
Now let's open up a little bit to questions. I see Mika, Carlos, which are non-panelists. Do you guys have any questions you want to ask the panelists? This is the last 8 minutes. If not, I have a couple of questions, but I want to make sure I give you respect. Carlos, Mika, if you want to add any questions to the panelists. You guys are on mute. I
I don't know if Carlos has something. If it wasn't discussed before because I joined a bit later, like about joining the government, like what are the steps, how you should go about it, just applying?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the procedural part of applying to the government is a question, Lucia, yes?
Yes, so just I studied business administration, which is not very government related. So in order to I had to do my master's in public policy in order to have some education and open some network towards those roles. And also everyone, I don't know if everyone in the panel, but if you want to work in government, it's easier if you are working for your country government or your city government, not internationally, or maybe in the embassy as Franklin, but something related to your country must bring you up the network. So those were my 2 tips. Find a network in your country, which would be more easy, and maybe have some education that can open a network there.
Yeah. Roger, you want to add something?
Yeah, you can also join some special cabinet where you know the job is very intense, or join some special projects in the ministries, or if the government has some special project. There is a lot of people coming from the private sector because there is a need of a lot of technicality. So you can join in those cabinets on some special project, or you can be counselors in ministries also, you know, to give your expertise to those you know, public servants in specific jobs, specific projects. That's something which is very valuable too.
Yeah, because they leverage your expertise. Franklin, I guess you want to say something?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, like, coming out of AIESEC, of course, if you have the academic background and all of that, it helps. But actually, there is a path for international development, you know, like for diplomacy. If it's in your government, usually there are like, you know, there is a very clear path for how to become a diplomat. I would encourage you, if this is a thing that you're interested in, even to consider it, because exactly, a lot of what we do working in the nonprofit sector, having an international experience, working towards development, a lot of this relates to how countries engage internationally, and that's a very it's a path, right? I think there are different paths. There is the technical path, which is exactly, you apply, it's like a contest, and then you get selected. But then there's the other path, and I think that path is also open to AIESECers, which is, because we're AIESECers, we can belong to certain networks. For example, the Global Shapers community of the World Economic Forum is one of those networks of highly influential individuals in your city, in your country, that eventually these are the individuals that become active political agents in the particular city or country. And then the way you go into government then is not necessarily as the bureaucrat, technical person, but actually as the political individual that is making decisions and driving decisions at the technical level, right? So, and that's also an important aspect of it, because the political individuals are the ones that keep the government more in tune with the people, with what the people want, whereas the technical bureaucrat is the one that actually shapes how can that be aligned, right? Which what Lucia was saying, how do we align with political interest? So each party has a role to play. And I think a question I'm not to discuss necessarily, but oh yes, to discuss is actually, I was looking at the different breakout rooms, and this is the room that had the least participants, right? And it also talks to how AIESECers see the importance of government and actually taking this step. I think we need more AIESECers in here. So that would also be an interesting discussion maybe for later.
Yeah, it is. Basically, I just want to address that this LLC Day is actually a showcase to the entire world of AIESECers to show this matters. Government matters. And we want to continue and to add, and it's the first series of events that we are doing in AI. I'm from AIESEC Life, and I joined here as a volunteer because I believe in this strongly, even though I don't work for government, I have serious experience with government. I believe strongly that AIESECers around the world needs to listen to this voice. We hope we're going to have a repeat on that on a go forward. Just to answer Andrew, but I want to give Carlos an opportunity, 3 minutes, if he has a question. If not, we continue with the last talking points, because everyone is 3-4 minutes before we join. Carlos, you have a question? If not,
yeah, well, not question. Just I know that people world is going through social programs, so governments should take into account that. And there are some countries which are in sample that are growing, even with pandemics. They are growing in this year. So very interesting everything. Thanks a lot to everyone.
So if I may, we said 2-3 minutes. I know each one of closing points based on what you talk. You can say what inspired you, or you know what you wish to accomplish. You know, a message. Go ahead. You know, go around and say your last touching points. You know, takes 30 seconds. Please go ahead.
Okay. Just 1 minute. I've been working through sister cities. I've been working and learning a lot of this. Now I belong to a company which is doing programs for culture, for politics, for physics, for every tourism, and many programs around some commissions in Mexico through the world. So we are very interested on linking and doing a lot of networking to Europe, Asia, Africa, all the countries. That's it.
I can close. I wanted to say something to Mika, that if you wanna look us, or for example me in LinkedIn, and tell us more about what you wanna do, and if you're interested in joining government, we can have a more personal conversation, so we can help you out, because we've all been there. And it's because of AIESEC I joined government. Because of AIESEC I realized I wanted to help people on a big scale, and I wanted to make things happen. And it was not easy to join the administration or the different projects, but it's totally worth it. So I do agree with Franklin that we need more people in AIESEC that afterwards want to join government. So I'm happy to help you, Mika, or anyone, because it's very important to have people that take responsibility towards the society in a big scale and make things happen on a big scale.
I guess I want to add just final thoughts is, why come in government, but then also why is it difficult to leave government, right? Like it's not that I don't have opportunities. For example, because I work with the private sector, I have opportunities with corporations, with multinationals, with whatnot. And every time I'm considering an opportunity, there is also this sense of doing something meaningful, you know, like in government, it can be tough some days. It can be, you know, you could possibly earn more somewhere else. But there is a difference between being a sales manager of a particular product, and then by the end of the month, you just sold more of that particular product, even if it's a global product. And there is a difference with saying, well, I work in something, if I do my job well, a day my job goes really well, I make a difference for people, you know? So that's something that keeps me going. Like my job really allows me that space to make a difference, or at least to think of making a difference and then figuring it how to do it. Whereas I do think it's sometimes more difficult to make the connection in other spaces. So every day I can wake up and feel really comfortable with where I am, what I'm doing, and knowing that I'm living up to those values and to that ideal of trying to make the world a better place. I think in government every day, you know that if you do well, you're making the world a little better. So I would definitely encourage AIESECers to consider it. And again, I came in as following the example of someone who was not a politician, who was not who's a technical person, but somebody I looked up to. She went into government and she said, exactly, if you are given the opportunity to serve, do it. And that's how I got in here, and I haven't regretted it, and I don't regret it.
Thank you, Franklin. Roger, you've been trying to say a few things, so go ahead and do closing. Looks like we have to leave break up very soon, so this will be probably the last minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, quickly. One last thing is that I would like especially to talk to my African young AIESECers. A lot of them are very afraid of joining into politics and administration, just because that, and I want to be frank, it can be deadly in Africa. You know, to expose yourself, and you know, even if you technically, if you got some acumen, business or skills or whatever, I think it's good to join and to be embedded in this kind of program, but it's also good to know that you can change the life of the people and accept that you have a role to play. Not only that, but accept to be exposed to in terms of confront with the difficulties and well be an example, even if sometimes it can be very difficult and hard.